Venezuela's economy, once so prosperous and stable, is now in ruins. There has been no collapse more dramatic, more significant in the last 50 years, and it's brought with it political chaos, crippling inflation, crime, and poverty. It's really hard to think of a human tragedy of this scale outside of civil war, Kenneth Rogoff, an economics professor at Harvard University, told the New York Times in May. This will be a touchstone of disastrous policies for decades to come. Venezuela, buoyed by large oil reserves and a functioning democratic government, was once the richest country in Latin America. Now, though, things are very different. The hyperinflation rate in early August reached an astonishing 10 million%, and the country now owes $100 billion to foreign creditors. The crisis, according to most economists, was set in motion by the reckless policies of Nicolas Maduro and his predecessor, Hugo Chavez. Opponents of Maduro, who assumed office in 2013 following the death of Chavez, accuse him of squandering billions of dollars in oil revenue and allowing inflation to rise and rise inexorably. Those who back Maduro blame strict sanctions imposed by Donald Trump's government and economic boycotts by the country's biggest businesses. The collapse of the economy has led to increased political violence and an alarming rise in homicides, and millions have fled the country to neighbouring Colombia. No industry nor aspect of daily life has gone unscathed, and that includes football, which has been brought to its knees at lower levels and even impacted at the very top in the Primera Division. Regular blackouts have interrupted several high-profile games, and there is often a lack of electricity and basic equipment. Players have often gone unpaid too. It's affected football massively, Carlos Tarak, a sports journalist based in Venezuela, told Tifo. The simple fact that the development of our rising talents has been impeded has had an impact on football's growth in the country. But dreams are not being held back by adversities, and today Venezuela is enjoying its most prodigious generation of players in years, coincidentally in one of the worst moments of its history. Remarkably, Venezuela's youth teams are thriving. A talented generation of young footballers are coming through, battling against hardship just to make a living. And supporters are responding, turning out in their thousands, even with money made worthless, with food and drink increasingly hard to come by, and crime rampant. The outlook for football in Venezuela, despite the turmoil, is surprisingly positive. The problems, though, are unavoidable. In March, a top-flight game between Caracas FC and Zulia was disrupted by a nationwide power blackout. The game was scheduled to be played at night, so both clubs attempted to rearrange the fixture for daylight hours. But the Venezuelan Football Federation refused to move the kickoff time, and Caracas and Zulia played out a 0-0 draw in protest. For that, both clubs were docked a point and fined 360,000 bolivars, at the time the equivalent of around £40 due to the hyperinflation. I publicly express my outrage at the disrespectful manner in which the FVF has addressed us footballers, Caracas captain Ruber Quijad said in response to the punishment. Venezuela has suffered a national blackout. The lack of electric affected Zulia state. Our preparation was hindered and the conditions to play the game were not there. The lack of electric, water, ice and the risk of injury and difficulty in being treated raised the risks. I demand respect and for Venezuelan footballers to be granted dignity. Do not forget that before being footballers, we are human beings. Other clubs have been hit even harder, most notably Primera Division side Deportivo Anzoátegui, who in July were forced to fold their first team because of insurmountable debt. Those players, unable to negotiate a move, have been left without a club and without a salary, at a time when money is already scarce. Let's say that a Venezuelan footballer who's been playing for 3 or 4 years and is quite well known can earn between $300 and $400 a month, while others can earn $80 to $100, said former Carabobo coach Wilson Gutierrez in a recent interview with El Espectador. It's really not enough. There are even some who get paid in bolivars, and there are also delays in payment. The situation is hardly ideal for young players attempting to make their way in the game, but that does not appear to have held back Venezuela's under-20s, who continue to impress on the international stages. Coached by Rafael Dudamel, the team made it to the final of the 2017 Under-20s World Cup, losing to England, and this year performed well at the South American Championship, beating the likes of Chile, Brazil and Colombia. Football over the last few years has proved a unifying force in Venezuela. Amid the political chaos, the debilitating inflation and poverty, it has brought people together, if only for 90 minutes, and allowed them, briefly, to forget. Distractions from the bleak reality are welcome, and perhaps most importantly, football has brought optimism. It's on an upward ascendancy, and one that I believe is unlikely to stop, Jordan Florett, the author of an upcoming book on Venezuelan football, Red Wine and Arepas, How Football is Becoming Venezuela's Religion, told Tifo. England is a football nation. It plays cricket and rugby too, obviously, but it's the people's sport. New Zealand is a rugby nation. India is a cricketing nation, and so forth. I think the general perception is still currently that Venezuela is a baseball nation, but a national football team offers representation on an international stage like no other sport, and in recent years, as La Vinotinto has become a source of pride for Venezuelans, it is slowly but surely usurping baseball. There is much still to do to improve the infrastructure of football in Venezuela, but that has been made increasingly difficult by the economic situation, and there are few signs of an imminent solution. The Federation and the League certainly have to take some actions to secure the continuing development of Venezuelan football, Carlos Bustamante, a Venezuelan journalist based in London, told Tifo. There's a lot of clubs who have 50% of their shares owned by government institutions, making them dependent on public funds that are increasingly in a deficit nowadays. Despite all the problems, there are still clubs committed to doing the right thing. Caracas FC and more recently Zulia FC have done it, and both are representing the country in the Copa Sudamericana. The future of the country is still unknown, but with the necessary reforms and following those examples, the future of Venezuelan football can be better. But the changes must be focused entirely on the structure of the organisations that rule football in Venezuela. There is much to ponder domestically, and there will likely be more clubs and individuals adversely affected by the economic collapse in the months to come. Internationally, though, the future looks refreshingly bright. The target for Venezuela is to reach the 2022 World Cup in Qatar, by which time the country may be on the road to recovery. The 2020s should be the best decade in La Vinotinto's history, says Florett. Their supporters should be very excited.